There's a stretch of highway in Nevada where even cell signals refuse to go. Locals call it the loneliest road in America, but I found out it's not completely empty. Something was waiting for me out there, something that doesn't want to be seen and definitely doesn't want to let you leave. What I saw behind that abandoned truck still keeps me up at night. I've always liked long drives. There's something oddly peaceful about it, just me, the road, and a good playlist keeping the silence from swallowing me whole. I'm not a trucker or anything, just a guy who sometimes needs to get away from the noise of everyday life. When things start to feel heavy or overwhelming, I pack a bag, top off the tank, and disappear onto the highways for a few days. No destination, no plan, just movement. This trip wasn't any different. It was mid-October, the trees were shedding their last coats of orange and red, and the weather had just started that crisp turn toward winter. I told myself I'd head west and see where the road took me. Nothing too dramatic, just a solo weekend out under wide skies, away from the city, the emails, and the constant hum of life. I'd driven most of the day, passing through scattered towns and rural stretches where gas stations were more like shrines, only one pump, dusty soda machines, and that unmistakable hum of a fridge full of decades-old sandwiches. By the time the sun started dipping, I was somewhere in Nevada, I think, or maybe Utah. GPS had cut out an hour ago, and cell service was a joke out there. But I wasn't worried. I had a paper map in the glove box and plenty of gas. Besides, I'd driven roads like this before. Desert highways that stretched so far and empty they barely felt real. That's something people don't talk about enough, how surreal those stretches of road can feel. There are no landmarks, no buildings, just flat land and sky, the occasional dry bush tumbling past like a cliché in motion. I passed maybe 2 cars in the span of an hour. It's the kind of solitude you think you want until you have it. I remember glancing at the clock on the dash, 6:47 p.m. The sun was almost gone now, replaced by that thick, dusky blue that comes right before night truly settles in. I figured I'd pull off at the next rest stop or gas station, maybe sleep in the car if I had to. That's when I saw the sign. It was old and wooden, half lit by a flickering bulb overhead. It simply read, "Next stop, Marrow Pass to 24 miles. The name didn't ring any bells, but it sounded remote, quiet, perfect. So I kept going, headlights carving through the darkness, the road beneath me disappearing into black. I didn't know it yet, but this exact stretch of forgotten road wasn't marked on any modern map, and Marrow Pass, well, I'd find out soon enough why locals avoid it entirely. It had started out like any other long-haul run. I was hauling a mostly empty flatbed trailer, just some construction panels and scaffolding, headed west through the Nevada Desert Route 50, the loneliest road in America, they call it. I used to think that nickname was just clever marketing, something for the travel brochures. But once you're out there, really out there, hours from any gas station or town, no lights except your own, that name makes a lot more sense. It was early October, around the time when the heat starts to break and the air picks up a sharpness, especially after the sun dips below the horizon. I'd been on the road since 7 a.m., made my fuel stop near Ely around noon, and now I was making the long push across toward Fallon, planning to stop somewhere in between and crash in the sleeper for the night. Nothing unusual. I've been trucking solo for years. You get used to the solitude. Some guys can't stand it. Me, I prefer it that way. Fewer distractions, fewer problems. Just the engine humming, wheels turning. Maybe a podcast or a little classic country on low volume. It gives you time to think, sometimes too much. This stretch of Route 50 was especially barren. You hit long ribbons of asphalt between low, rolling hills, the occasional stand of dry trees or tumbleweed scraping along the shoulder. No traffic, no billboards, just endless desert stretching in all directions. I checked my mirrors like I always do, left, right, then a glance at the rear view to see the trailer bouncing slightly with the rhythm of the road. Everything looked fine. Cruise control was holding steady. RPMs were where they should be. The CB radio had been quiet all day, not that I expected much traffic out here. A few drivers might come through this route, but most avoid it. Fewer way stations, sure, but if you break down, you're waiting a while, not even cell reception in some areas. Still, the silence felt heavier than usual. I kept rolling. Around 4 p.m., I pulled off at a wide shoulder turnout, just a patch of gravel someone had flattened years ago, probably for emergencies. I wanted to stretch my legs, use the side of the trailer for a quick pit stop, and pour a lukewarm coffee from my thermos. The sky had gone this strange washed out color, like the sun was struggling to hold on to the last hour of daylight. It was quiet, still. Not even the buzz of bugs or wind. I stood there for a moment, taking in the nothingness. It always hits me differently out here. Like standing on the edge of something massive and ancient, where time doesn't work the same. A place where you're small and very alone. Still, I didn't think much of it. I climbed back into the cab, rolled my shoulders, cracked my knuckles, and got moving again. About 30 minutes later, I passed a weathered green sign that said, "Next services, 120 miles. That didn't faze me. My fuel gauge was solid, and I had snacks, water, and more than enough driving hours left for the day. I turned the volume up a little on the radio, some old Merle Haggard, drifting through the speakers. Sunlight flickered between distant ridges as I crested another rise. I remember thinking, this part of the drive always feels like a dream, like you're floating more than driving, and then I saw something that caught my eye. Off in the distance, maybe a mile down the road, was another rig. It was unusual only because I hadn't seen another driver in hours. It looked like an older model dark cab, chrome tanks, but it was hard to tell in the hazy light. I figured maybe he was pulled over or slowing down, but the odd part was, the truck wasn't moving at all, just sitting there, dead center of the road. I eased off the throttle a little, watching it through the windshield. As I got closer, I realized the truck didn't have any lights on, no brake lights, no hazards, no reflective tape catching the last rays of sun, just parked there, still and silent like a monument. I slowed more, dipping under 45 miles per hour, wondering if maybe it was abandoned or someone had broken down. Maybe they were inside the cab asleep, but even then who stops like that, right in the middle of the lane, about 200 yards out? I flicked on my hazards, gave a couple short blasts of my horn, and edged into the left lane to pass. No response. That's when I noticed something else. That there was dust gathered all over the rig's rear doors, dust so thick it had crusted over like old mud. That truck hadn't moved in a long time, weeks, maybe longer, and yet it hadn't been there earlier. I would have seen it. There was nowhere else it could have come from. No on-ramps, no crossroads. It was just ... there ... out of nowhere ... By the time I passed, I was going slow enough to get a decent look into the cab. It was empty, no driver, no gear, not even a pair of gloves on the dash or trash on the floorboards. Completely stripped bare, like it had been left to rot. The windshield was cracked across one corner, and one of the side mirrors hung limp like it had been smashed and half-fixed, but no sign of life. I remember muttering to myself something like, "That's damn strange," and then I hit the throttle again, wanting to get back to highway speed. But that image stuck in my mind. How could something that old and abandoned end up right in the middle of a road that hadn't seen traffic all day? Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe a tow company dropped it there. Maybe it had been hauled for salvage and someone ditched it. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right, and the road ahead suddenly felt much longer. It was a little after 11:30 p.m. when I noticed the first strange thing. I'd been driving for hours at that point, just me, the road, and the occasional flicker of distant headlights in the opposite lane. My route had taken me through long, flat stretches of western Texas, the kind of terrain where the sky feels too big, the silence too deep, and where you can go a full hour without seeing a gas station, let alone another car I'd just passed. A green reflective sign for Route 90, or at least I thought I had. My headlights had caught it at a strange angle, and by the time I realized what it said, I was already too far past it to check again. What stood out wasn't the sign itself, but the fact that I could have sworn I passed that exact same marker nearly 20 minutes earlier. Same bent metal, same bullet hole in the corner, same rust stain running down the post like dried blood. I brushed it off at first. Maybe it was just a copy. Small highways sometimes reuse mile markers, right? Still, a tight little knot started to form in the pit of my stomach. 15 minutes later, I noticed something else. A red pickup truck that appeared in my rearview mirror. It wasn't tailgating, not even speeding, just keeping pace with me from a good distance. Headlights low and steady. I didn't think much of it. But then, 5 minutes passed. 10-15 dots still there. No pass, no drive. Just that same steady glow of headlights, like the truck was matching my every move. I slowed down slightly. The truck slowed down too. I sped up, so did it. I even changed lanes once, drifting onto the left side of the road to see if maybe the driver would take the hint. But they didn't. They stayed behind me, centered in my mirror, like a shadow that wouldn't go away. That's when I started to feel watched. The kind of watch that makes your arms itch, that makes your shoulder blades tense up like your body knows something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. I rolled down the window to get some air and heard it faint at first. A sound, almost like whispering. I turned the music off, thinking maybe something from the radio was bleeding through, but I had my phone on airplane mode. No signal out here, no data, just downloaded playlists and silence. Still, the whispering persisted, barely audible, like someone talking from the back seat, even though I was completely alone. I checked behind me, nothing but my gear. Cooler jacket, flashlight, nothing had shifted, nothing moved. I started scanning the road ahead more carefully, the darkness beyond my headlights suddenly feeling thicker, heavier. I glanced at the side of the road, and that's when I saw something strange in the dirt just past the white line. Footprints. Human footprints. Human footprints. Now, I'm not an expert tracker or anything, but these weren't animal tracks. They were long, deep, barefoot, out here in the desert. Who the hell would be walking along the highway barefoot? I kept going. I didn't stop, but the unease began settling into my chest like cement. I kept my eyes on the shoulder, watching for more, and sure enough, every few hundred feet, another set. Same shape, same spacing, same eerie direction, always facing the road. At one point, I passed a weathered road sign, half rusted and tilted sideways, that simply read, "Note, services next 73 miles. Perfect. I was fully alone now, no lights on the horizon, no radio signal, not even the faint hum of civilization. And that red pickup truck, still behind me. But here's where it got worse. I passed a side road, just a dirt turnoff that led into pitch blackness. No buildings, no houses, nothing on the map. And as I drove past, I caught movement in my peripheral vision. The red truck suddenly veered off, no turn signal, no brake. Just a sudden, sharp swerve onto the side road. Gone. At first I felt relief. Finally, they were gone. But that feeling lasted maybe 10 seconds before something else sank in. That dirt road, I'd seen it before, not recently, but months ago, during another trip. I remember it because I had pulled off there once to relieve myself, and I had made a mental note never to stop there again. It was one of those places that just feels wrong, even in daylight. No birds, no wind, just a dead silence that pressed down on you like you weren't supposed to be there. And now this truck had disappeared into it. I pushed the thought away and kept driving. That's when my headlights picked up something lying in the road up ahead. I slowed down, thinking it was a dead animal, maybe a deer or some roadkill, common enough out here. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't an animal at all. It was a jacket, a denim jacket, neatly folded and placed in the middle of the lane. I stopped, just sat there for a second, engine humming quietly in the night. My high beams washed over the jacket, casting a long surreal shadow behind it. No blood, no body, no indication of why it was there. And then my headlights flickered just once. Off, then back on. I didn't move. My fingers were gripping the wheel now, knuckles pale. I reached for my phone, no signal. Still, just as I was about to reverse and go around the jacket, something darted across the road, too fast to see clearly, but it was on two legs, tall, thin, and gone in a blink, like it had been waiting. I didn't stop to examine anything after that. I swerved around the jacket, tires kicking up dust, and kept driving, fast, but I never shook the feeling that whatever I'd just seen, whatever had laid that jacket out like bait, was still watching me from the dark, and somewhere behind me, maybe even parallel to the road, something else was following, not in a vehicle, not in any way that made sense, just ... keeping pace. I was about 30 miles from the nearest exit when my GPS suddenly glitched. The map froze mid-turn, then spun wildly, and when it reloaded, the road ahead wasn't even on it anymore. Just a flat, empty gray void with a pulsing blue dot me in the center. No signal, no reroute, no voice navigation, nothing. I figured it was just a dead zone, common enough out here, but something about the timing felt off, like the technology was reacting to something, not failing randomly. I tried to shake it off, eyes forward, hands on the wheel. I focused on the white lines blurring under the headlights, but then, something shifted. The hum of the tires on pavement, the steady white noise that had been with me all night, suddenly changed. It was subtle, but distinct, a change in the road surface. I realized I'd drifted onto something that wasn't asphalt anymore. It felt ... rougher, older. The painted lines had vanished, and when I looked around, I realized the desert had changed too. There were no more scrub bushes, no fence lines, no distant silhouettes of rock formations, just flat, featureless dirt stretching in every direction like the land had been scrubbed clean. I slowed to a crawl, confused, trying to make sense of it. Maybe I'd taken a wrong turn somehow. That's when my headlights caught something. Up ahead, a figure standing directly in the middle of the road, At first, I thought it might be a hitchhiker, maybe someone broken down or lost. But as I got closer, the details didn't make sense. The figure didn't move, not even to shield their eyes from the light. They were wearing something that looked like an old-fashioned coat, long threadbare like a Civil War duster. Face was turned away, angled just slightly so I couldn't see the features, no reaction, no step to the side. I rolled to a stop about 20 feet away. Engine idling. Headlights bathing the figure in white. Still, they didn't move. IHONKED. Nothing. Part of me wanted to throw the truck in reverse and leave, but another part of me, some mix of confusion, disbelief, and stubbornness, got out. I kept the engine running and door open behind me. Hey, I called out. The figure didn't turn. I took a few cautious steps forward. The air felt colder. Here wrong. Somehow, like the temperature had dropped 20 degrees in just a few yards. You alright? I asked, more gently this time. Still nothing. I got within 10 feet. That's when I noticed. The figure wasn't breathing, not visibly, no movement in the shoulders, no shift of weight, no reaction to my voice or footsteps. And then slowly, the figure turned its head. Not all the way, just slightly. Enough for me to see part of the face. It WASN, single quotes T. Right. The eye socket was empty. Just a hollow, dark space. The skin around the cheek was sunken, gray and taut like dried leather. And where the lips should have been, there was only a twisted grin, thin and too wide. I stumbled back. That was enough for me. I turned, rushed to the truck, slammed the door shut, but before I could throw it into gear, I glanced back through the windshield. The road was empty. Gone. Not just the figure. The entire road, where I'd just driven, where I'd just walked, was now pitch black dirt. No tire marks, no footprints, no sign that anything had ever been there. The only light came from my own headlights. The GPS still refused to load. I didn't know where I was anymore, and somehow I was certain I hadn't moved at all. I was still in that same stretch of highway, but the highway wasn't the same anymore. I threw it in drive and pressed the gas. The truck lurched forward, wheels kicking up dust, engine growling in the still air. I didn't care where I was going, I just needed distance between me and that thing. But 10 seconds later, I saw it again. Not in the road, this time, to the side of it, standing just at the edge of my headlights, still facing away, still unmoving, still smiling. It hadn't followed me, it had gotten ahead. My hands were locked to the wheel, knuckles white, sweat forming even though the cabin was freezing. I didn't blink, I didn't breathe right. I just kept driving forward because I didn't know what else to do. That figure, that finger, that thing had appeared ahead of me again, and then again and again, each time the same, standing just outside the reach of my high beams, slightly turned. Expression unreadable but unmistakably wrong. It didn't move, it didn't walk, it just was. No matter how far I drove, how many turns I made, or how erratically I steered, it was there, like it was tethered to my path, or I to it. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 2:46 a.m. The same time it had been when I first saw the figure. I frowned, and stared at it for a few seconds longer. Still 2:46. I tapped the screen, turned the radio on and off. The time didn't change. I pulled out my phone, dead black screen. I plugged it into the charger, nothing. Even my dashcam, which had been recording the whole drive, was frozen, blinking with a red error. I was disconnected from everything, and that's when I noticed something worse. The engine noise. It had been humming steadily, as engines do, but now it had a faint echo, like it was being reflected back at me from something close. Too close. I looked in the rearview mirror, and nearly screamed. For a split second, just a blink, I saw movement behind the cab. Not headlights, not another vehicle, just a flicker, a shape, hunched low like someone crawling over the load bed. I slammed the brakes. The rig shuddered violently. The trailer groaned. I threw open the door, grabbed my flashlight from the side pocket, and jumped out. I aimed it toward the back. Nothing. Empty desert. Empty trailer. No footprints. No dust disturbed. But I know I saw something. The kind of certainty that bypasses logic. It hits you in the gut, not the brain. I climbed back into the cab, hand shaking as I turned the ignition again. The truck coughed once, twice. Dead. My lights were still on, dash still lit, but the engine just wouldn't start. Then the smell hit me. Not gas, not oil. Rot. Like something wet and decaying had been sitting in the heat for hours, sweet and sour at the same time, like rotted fruit and old meat. I turned toward the passenger seat. It was there, sitting in my truck. The same figure now, closer than ever. The long coat, the empty eye socket, the too wide grin. Its hands were folded politely in its lap. like it had been waiting for me to notice. My body locked up, every nerve screaming to run, but my limbs wouldn't obey. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then slowly it turned its head toward me. It didn't speak. It opened its mouth, and from inside, I heard something that didn't belong. In this world, it wasn't a voice. It was the sound of tires, skidding, metal crunching, shattering glass. A scream, but not one I recognized that it was my voice. From a memory I hadn't lived yet, and then it was gone. Not vanished, not dissolved, just gone, like a trick of the eye. But the door beside me was open, like something had exited. I slammed it shut, hit the ignition again, and this time the engine roared to life like it had never failed. I floored it. The truck groaned as it launched forward. My hands were shaking too bad to keep it straight. I drove like a madman, swerving across the center line, tires digging into the dirt shoulder as I tried to gain distance from whatever that had been. But I realized something far worse a few miles down the road. The road had no signs, no mileage, markers, no exit numbers, no billboards, no overheads, nothing, just endless dark pavement stretching in both directions. And I was running out of fuel. I hadn't passed a gas station in hours, and still, the clock said 2:46 a.m. I don't remember. Walking inside that gas station, I must have parked the rig, left the keys in the ignition, and stumbled through the dust like a drunk man in a nightmare. The fluorescent lights inside the station were dim, flickering now and then, but after the total blackness I'd been in, even that weak yellow buzz felt like heaven. There was no cashier, no music, just the steady hum of a soda machine and the rattle of one broken ceiling fan rotating off balance. The place was real, though I could smell the faint mix of old oil, floor cleaner, and burnt coffee. I gripped the counter like it was the only solid thing in the world, and just stood there, breathing like I'd sprinted a marathon. My face was pale in the security mirror above the door. Eyes wide, lips cracked, dust crusted around my collar. I looked like I'd crawled out of a wreck. Honestly, that's what it felt like. Eventually, a man came out from the back, mid-60s, wiry gray hair, leathery face. He didn't say anything at first, just gave me a long look. Not annoyed, not surprised, just knowing. You came down off 50, didn't you? He asked. Throat dry. He just sighed, grabbed a bottle of water from the cooler, and slid it to me. Don't talk, just drink. Sit a minute. So I did. I sat in the booth by the window and chugged half that bottle like it was the last thing keeping me alive. For the next half hour, I barely moved. He didn't ask questions. I didn't offer answers, but he kept glancing out the window like he was expecting something else to show up behind me. When I finally felt like I could stand again, I asked the only question I could form: what the hell was that? He looked at me for a long time, then walked to the coffee machine and poured a cup for himself. Real casual. Road sold, he said. That stretch between Ely and Delta, been around longer than the maps. Some say it don't follow the land, it follows something else. Something older. I thought about the shapes I'd seen, the whispers, the hands behind the curtain. You saying I imagined it? I asked. He shook his head slowly. I'm saying you survived it. Those words stuck with me. I didn't even tell my dispatcher what happened. I just said I had a bad tire, lost a few hours, needed to rest. Took a hotel nearby, didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back in that cab, on that road, with something crawling toward me from the sleeper. It's been 3 weeks since then. I haven't taken a route through Nevada again, not even close. Something about that stretch, it changes you. I can't even drive night holes anymore without checking the mirrors every 5 seconds. I leave the curtain open in the bunk now, all the time, just to be sure. The strange part, the dash cam didn't catch any of it, just empty road. No figures, no truck blocking the lane, no radio audio. It was like everything that happened that night existed outside the frame, like it was never meant to be recorded, just remembered. Sometimes, I wonder how many other drivers saw what I did and just didn't make it out. You'd think sharing it here would help. But if anything, typing this only makes the memory sharper, like speaking it aloud wakes something up. I've tried to tell myself it was just stress, road fatigue, my mind playing tricks. But then, last night, I stopped at a truck stop in Arizona somewhere along I-40. Just needed to fuel up and stretch my legs. As I was filling up, I glanced across the parking lot and I saw it. A woman, standing between 2 parked rigs. Long coat, pale face, watching. She didn't move. I looked away for a second, maybe 2 on. When I looked back, gone. My chest felt tight the rest of the night. So yeah, maybe I didn't really leave that road after all. Maybe once it sees you, it never really lets go. And if you're reading this, thinking about running solo routes through the desert at night, don't. Some highways were built for people, others were just carved through something ancient, something that never wanted company. And sometimes, if you drive them long enough, something might just come along for the ride. I don't remember the next few miles. Somehow I ended up back on the main highway, my hands clenched tight around the wheel, eyes wide and bloodshot from staring at the road like my life depended on it, which, to be honest, it probably did. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it, thudding in my ears, drowning out everything else. The CB was dead silent now, no static, no voices, just a kind of eerie emptiness, like the air itself was holding its breath. I didn't stop until I saw the glowing lights of a truck stop near the Utah border, one of those 24-hour joints with a diner, fuel pumps, and a couple of sketchy showers around back. Normally I'd have driven right past it, but this time I pulled in like I was running from the devil himself. The moment I killed the engine, the silence hit me like a hammer, not the usual quiet either. This was the kind that presses in on your skull like the world had gone hollow. I just sat there for a minute, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. Then, slowly, I peeled my fingers off the wheel, opened the door, and climbed out. The cold air felt like a slap to the face. I stood there under the buzzing orange lights, trying to steady my breathing. A few other truckers were around, one guy walking his dog, another fueling up, but no one looked twice at me. No one knew what I'd just come from, what I'd seen. And even if I told them, I don't think they'd believe it. Inside the diner, everything felt ... off. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead. The waitress gave me a tired smile and asked if I wanted coffee. I nodded, sat down in a booth, and tried to stop my hands from shaking. I kept glancing at the windows, half expecting to see that shadowy figure standing just beyond the glass, watching, but it never came. The coffee tasted like ash. I drank it anyway. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even get back in the truck. I sat in that diner until the sky outside started to pale into dawn, staring at the wall clock like it was ticking down to something. Every now and then, I swore I heard whispers behind me. Every time, there was nothing there. Eventually, I drove home. I called dispatch, told them I was sick. They didn't ask questions. I guess when you've been on the road as long as I have, people learn to leave you alone when you say you need time. But here's the thing, that wasn't the end of it. It's been a couple weeks since that night. The truck's still parked in my driveway. I haven't gotten back behind the wheel since. I tell people I'm taking a break, that I've been driving too long, need a little time to myself. But the truth is, I'm scared, really scared. Not of the road, not exactly. I'm scared of what followed me off of it. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, convinced there's someone standing at the end of the hallway. The curtains in my bedroom rustle when there's no breeze. I'll hear something brush against the outside wall, like fingers dragging across it. I keep the hallway light on now. I never used to. And every now and then, just when I'm about to drift off, I'll hear a voice, that same woman's voice from the CB radio. Where are you now? I don't respond. I just lie there in the dark, paralyzed, waiting for it to pass. I've even unplugged the CB from my rig. Doesn't matter. Last night it turned itself on. I went outside, opened the cab, and sure enough the green light was glowing, soft and steady. Channel 0. I didn't touch it. I just closed the door and walked back inside. You know how some people say the road gets into your blood? Maybe they're right. But I think there's something else out there too, something that rides the highways. Especially the forgotten ones. The ones no one talks about. The ones that stretch for hours through desert and woods and nowhere in between. They're like scars across the land, and something ancient still travels them, waiting, watching, hitching rides with drivers who wander too far. I used to laugh at the old trucker ghost stories, CB channel myths, creepy tales passed around diners at 3 a.m. I'm not laughing anymore now. I keep my curtains closed. I double lock the doors, and every time the radio crackles, even the regular FM one, I freeze. Because part of me is still on that road. Part of me is still hearing the static. They're still seeing those eyes in the mirror, still waiting for her to whisper again, you never made it home.